production of Ruckus is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, the Hartwig family, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly, and our topics this week: KCI's future still unresolved. Governor Brownback moves to resolve the border war, and the war of words over religion and restrooms continues unresolved, plus roast and toast. But we start with our interview segment and focus on an upcoming workshop titled Telling Your Story, A Time and a Place. It's coming up on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, April 22nd through the 24th at the Writers Place, 3607 Pennsylvania in Kansas City, Missouri. Workshop is designed exclusively for military members past and present and their families. To tell us more about the event, published writer and poet Dr. H.C. Palmer, a retired internist who served as a battalion surgeon during the Vietnam conflict. Doctor, welcome to Ruckus. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So tell us how you made the transition from physician to poet.
Well, I decided that when I retired, I wanted to do something important. And I have enough poet friends that they convinced me that poetry is pretty important.
Were you in the military for like 20 plus years?
I was drafted out of my residency in 1964 and spent 2 years, a year at Fort Riley and a year in Vietnam.
And then in private practice?
Then in private practice, most of the time in western Kansas.
Okay. In your writing, and I know you do poetry and other forms of writing, do you use your Vietnam experiences as a reason for what you do?
Yes, I suppose that and my place, which is the Flint Hills, and strangely the two seem to relate because there's tall grass in the Flint Hills and there's elephant grass in Vietnam, and you kind of get the flashbacks when you're out there, but it's a beautiful kind of a flashback, maybe a little bit of terror with it. So, yeah.
Is the workshop this weekend designed to be therapeutic for some of the people who attend, veterans or people currently in the military who may have disturbing experiences they want to reflect on?
Well, we don't like to use the word therapeutic.
Restorative?
It's restorative, maybe. We think that what happens when you're in war, you have a lot of brokenness. You know, the Irish say the past is not past; it's with you. And so we think through writing and telling your story, whether you do it in a poem or a story or a memoir, and sharing it with others, and importantly in a safe place, or with other veterans who are going to be judgmental. We think that helps us sort of negotiate our brokenness, you might say.
Well, let's say there are people who are watching who would be qualified by their experience to attend the seminars, but have no real experience writing and fear they'd be embarrassed. What can you say to them?
Well, that's primarily why we do it. We just want them to tell their story to others and themselves, and as they tell their story, they'll find that their story may change a little bit as they think back and process the memories of war.
Registration is somewhat limited for this event, if I understand correctly.
Yes, but we have a few spaces left.
All right, what does someone do if he or she wants to get more information or perhaps enroll for
Well, there's a
event?
website.
All right.
And
do you know what it is?
It should be on the screen.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll find it, I'm sure, and pass it along.
It's the Writer's Place. You can go to the Writer's Place and look for telling your story, and it'll show up there.
This is, I think, the third time you've had this event. Have previous ones spawned people who have become published writers?
Yes. We have a fellow who was a Vietnam vet, like you and I, who was a photographer, who actually, one of our sponsors last year was the Kansas Humanities Council, and they picked one of his poems to print in their magazine. So the answer is yes.
One of the sessions, I believe, involves self-publishing, which I suppose is widespread now because of technological advances.
That's the first time we've offered that. That'll be on Sunday morning, the last event, and a lot of people do that. And sometimes, as you know, people self-publish a book and it gets taken by a publisher and becomes very popular.
Do some of the people who have attended these sessions in the past get together afterwards and maybe have their sessions together and continue the explorations?
We have an ongoing group that meets at the Kansas City Public Library, downtown library, in the Turner Boardroom, by the way, and on the first Saturday of every month. And we've been doing that for 3 years. The group varies from 8 to 12, and 12 is about the max you can have a group like that. And when we get more, which we hope we will from this particular event that we're having this weekend, then we will probably start another group as well.
And give people who might come to the event your best tip.
Take advantage of this so you can tell your story to yourself and find just a little bit of peace and a way to negotiate all these bad things that may have happened to you in a war.
Doctor, thanks very much for coming in, and I hope your weekend session goes very well and you have a good turnout.
I appreciate it, Mike. Appreciate it very much.
That is Dr. H.C. Palmer with the Telling Your Story workshop, April 22nd through the 24th at the Writers' Place. Now let's head over to the Talkers' Place and start a ruckus. Marianne Murray Simons is a freelance writer and consultant. John Stevens is the head of Rockhurst Strategic. Teresa Garza is with Lincoln Consulting, and Patrick Toohey is the field manager at the Show Me Institute, a libertarian think tank. Thanks for all of you to come in today. Thanks for coming in today and being a part of the program.
Thank you.
From time to time, we see the decisions that affect people who live throughout the metro area rendered by folks who live in just one of the dozens of communities that constitute Greater Kansas City. The most recent, the earnings tax election, affecting everyone who works in Kansas City, Missouri, but may live elsewhere. The next one will also be decided by Kansas City, Missouri voters, but will interest folks throughout the bi-state region and beyond. Coming up, a vote on the future of Kansas City International Airport. The question first to be decided by the City Council, then by voters, whether to build a brand new facility or renovate the existing one. Strong arguments exist on both sides, but what arguments do supporters of the new airport use? Let's start with John.
Sure. Well, the current terminals have served us for 40 years. Not necessarily always very well. There's a reason that no airport has been built in this style since the 1974. And so looking at it, this has been discussed, researched, and we now have reached a point where something must be done for the next 40 years. And a new terminal is the right approach because it's cost effective. The airlines want it. The airlines, in fact, are going to pay for it. And it's what we need to look at for the future of Kansas City.
Well, some people, Teresa, suggest that a new airport, a new, more modern airport is important because of the image it projects of Kansas City to people who travel here from around the country and sometimes around the world.
True, and I think also there's the argument here from locals that we like the convenience of the current airport. I mean, that's been one of the big issues that has played out in this whole conversation. And I think though also that we forget to often talk about the fact that the FAA requires us to have certain things to keep that international status. And so that's I think what really is the underlying issue is, are we maintaining the things that need to be maintained by FAA regulations?
Well, from what I understand, Marianne, Southwest Airlines, which is the busiest of the airlines at KCI, wants a new terminal. If that's true, is that not dispositive?
I hope so. It's the right thing to happen for the city of Kansas City, for the region. As John said, this current configuration has outlived its useful life. We need to look at the future of Kansas City. We need a new gateway. Not the least of which issue is that 18,000 jobs will be developed as a result of the construction of the new airport, as well as ongoing positions at KCI. And that's a huge economic issue for the city.
Patrick, it looks like the council at least is leaning toward a new airport. You don't think so?
Well, first of all, let me say that I disagree with almost everything that was said at this table.
That's why we invited you.
That's why you're here, right?
A little bit of balance, sure. We have other airports, other cities around the country that have done this. We have San Jose, we have Cincinnati, we have Sacramento, who took on billion-dollar projects and saw the cost of servicing, the cost of the airlines go up and service go down. Kansas City's airport is perfectly fine to service the population we have, and we don't know enough about these deals. Exactly how much is Southwest going to put up? Who's going to finance it? And who's accepting the risk? We don't know any of that stuff. And the problem in Kansas City is that our aviation department has misled the public, has misled the city council, has misled the Kansas City Star. has no kind of authority or no credibility to push this forward. So the devil's in the details, and we don't know any of those.
Well, and I should point
that's-
out, and get somebody else to comment here, that it is a two-step approach. First, the city council has to put something on the ballot, and then by agreement with the Citizens for Responsible Government organization and others, it has to go on the ballot, and the voters of Kansas City have to decide.
Correct. And I think there has been a strong process, in spite of what Patrick says. There's been a lot of discussion. It's all been in public. There's been multiple hearings. There have been a lot of experts that have weighed in from all different sides of the issue. And I think where we are going to end up is next week, you're going to hear a presentation from the airlines. And not just Southwest. This is going to be the unified airlines that operate out of KCI. They are the customer that services. They decide what service comes in and out of this airport. And I think what they're going to say and what they've said before is that somewhat of this customer convenience, there are a lot of audiences that believe in convenience at KCI. We're not going to sacrifice convenience. We're going to continue to build convenience. And the idea that it is currently convenient for all customers is absolute fallacy.
And it's a different airport than what the airport of the future will be from a security standpoint, from a ticketing standpoint that is basically done from your cell phone now for most of us. It is antiquated and needs to evolve to the next generation airport.
And there is a local architectural firm, Crawford, I believe, working with Councilwoman Teresa Lohr and perhaps others, who says this can be done a lot more cheaply and just as efficiently.
That's right. They looked at the aviation department plans and found that their renovation costs were greatly inflated, but the City Council refuses to hear from Crawford. The City Council, I believe, has not had any hearings on financing. We've been told that this will it'll cost the aviation department $86 million a year to service the debt. The budget they have now is $120 million. Where does all that money come from? That's a lot of lattes. That's a lot of socks to sell, a lot of calzones. We don't know where the money's come from. And if we look at other cities that have done this, they've been stuck with a huge bill.
Got to wrap it up. I'm always amused by the fact that people argue that the airport is so convenient, and indeed it is. But when it first opened some 40 years ago, people used to joke KCI stood for Kansas City Inconvenient, because at the time it was so remote from where most people in the area lived. All right, in a society that typically condones competition, there are some exceptions, and one involves the bi-state border war, the battle between Kansas and Missouri to attract businesses and jobs from one side of state line to the other. The battle is often more intense in the Kansas City area due to the proximity of the two states. In recent days, Kansas Governor Sam Brownback has called for a truce and says he will halt some tax incentives. Missouri took a similar step a couple of years ago. Now we'll see if the two states can find common ground. First question, why do so many seem so concerned about the so-called border war, Patrick?
It costs taxpayers a great deal of money. And Missouri spends money to lure businesses to the Missouri side. Kansas spends money to move business back to the Kansas side. Applebee's is a perfect example that played the two states off each other for years. And of course, it allowed the economic development corporations on both sides to claim hollow victories. But what remains to be seen is we play this game in Kansas City. We've hollowed out our tax base by subsidizing development of all kinds. And so what's good for Missouri, what's good for Kansas, these are welcome announcements. Will Kansas City follow suit and stop playing the incentive game?
Teresa, why has it taken so long to get the two sides at least reasonably close?
That's a good question.
That's why I asked it.
I think that, you always have obviously competing factors when you're looking at economic development on both sides of the state line. So how they come together, how they try and figure out how to work together for the entire metro region is extremely important. I think it's taken a while. I think we've still probably got some work to do, but I don't think that it's impossible. I think that there are things that they can definitely do, and the state of Missouri has made some leeway in that. Kansas is making it now, and it's how do we get to the final result.
Some people say Kansas wants to stop it because it has no more money.
I think that's part of it.
That might be part of it.
It's argued that this transfer of business from one state to the other doesn't change the number of jobs in Metro Kansas City, and I'm sure that's true. But doesn't it change the number of jobs in the city where businesses locate?
To an extent, but
is that not advantageous for some communities?
Yeah, but people drive across the state line multiple times in a day. And so what happens is these businesses, as Patrick said, they move. They can claim a hollow victory of moving into a community. Those jobs, those homes, those rooftops don't follow into that community. People stay when they move. When you move 4 miles across from one community to another, the jobs, the homes of those employees are staying where they are.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, we've got an area where you have people that work in Kansas or Missouri, but they live in the opposite state. I mean, it's just the way that our metro region is set up.
Oh, well, John and Teresa have, I'm sure, accidentally stumbled onto an economic truth, which is income taxes and sales taxes are very distortionary because people pick up and move, but property taxes,
Right.
You cannot pick up and move in property tax. Kansas City ought to move toward a model, and the states ought to use toward a model of taxes that are least distortionary rather than these taxes that people move back and forth and play the states against.
The earnings tax is an issue also for some of the people who are moving back and forth across state line, and I assume that has some impact on Kansas City, Missouri. And so Mayor Sly James has been very outspoken in saying it's about time. Let's just do away with what has been a ridiculous give and take of jobs that are staying in the metro area but are moving across the state line.
And not creating new jobs.
And not creating a net
Exactly.
new job.
I think
Yeah.
that's one of the bigger ones is the civic leadership in the metropolitan area has really taken their eye off the ball. And it needs to be regional competitiveness. We continue to fall further behind in regional competitiveness, national, global scale, because we're focused on moving businesses a mile versus looking at how do we become a better place. And I obviously am not against targeted incentives. I believe that those do work. But we have to consider moving across state lines, moving across false boundaries within the community does nothing for the future of our city.
Well, this has to be, at least the Kansas version has to be approved by the Missouri legislature, and there may not be enough time for it to be approved.
May
this
13th is
session.
coming really quickly.
But let's say it is an agreement, and there are boundaries in the agreement, and suddenly a really good deal comes along that would slightly violate the agreement but would be quite a gain for one of the communities or one of the states. Do you think it'll be ignored? The state won't take advantage of it, either Missouri or Kansas, either Jackson County or Johnson County?
In a perfect world, they would honor an agreement. In reality, I think the jury is out, depending on how large that incentive might be and how large that opportunity might be.
I think the thing to look for in Governor Brownback's truce, so to speak, is will he carve out the Star Bond program and say, well, that is a separate program, or will he include that in this, quote, truce? I think that's going to be one of the key things to look for as this moves forward.
I'm going to have to end this segment with the sad news. We do not live in a perfect world, decreed by Marianne Murray Simon. Now, the longer we follow the news, the more confident we become that Yogi Berra was right. It ain't over till it's over. Just as the state legislatures were moving into the final weeks of their sessions and the likelihood of controversy was fading, both Jeff City and Topeka came up with game changers. The Missouri legislature is hoping to put a religious freedom amendment on the ballot. The goal is to shield businesses and organizations that disapprove of same-sex marriage from having to deal with it. In Kansas, the controversy surrounds the use of restrooms in public schools by transgendered students. We'll get to religion in a moment, but first we'll go to the restroom legislation. What is it all about, Marianne?
I don't know. It's crazy. It is a bill that would require public schools and universities in Kansas to be able to designate restrooms based upon a person's gender at birth. Transgender means the person doesn't identify with how they were born. So there is this giant LGBT discussion as well as the greater community discussion about what sense this makes. This is an issue that doesn't have a cause. It also has a weird little bail or payment that of $2,500.
Somebody who's offended by
Right.
a transgendered person using the
If I
restroom.
were in a restroom and someone came in and either identified themselves or I somehow figured out that they were not in the right place for their gender, there would be a bounty I would be paid of $2,500 if I filed suit against the school. And I could also get emotional and physical damages as a result of that, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Let me finish, please. This issue is about children, and it's about doing the right thing for our children in schools where there's an issue. The Federal Appeals Court this week just made a ruling 2-1 that determined that a transgender teen in Virginia was discriminated against because federal law, according to this legislation, is only can only support how a person identifies with their gender, not how they were born. And I think that's the way all states should be looking at this and not be looking for an issue to talk about.
Okay, Patrick, here's the way people who support it tend to speak. They say, I'm the father of some young girls. I don't want some male who may believe that he is female and may dress in that fashion, may even look female, to go into restrooms that my daughters use or locker rooms or showers that my daughters use. Is that a crazy position?
It's not a crazy position, and it seems to me Kansas is trying to head off some future lawsuits and damages and stuff like this. The problem isn't the definition of who can sue in schools like that. The problem is we don't know what identify means. I mean, how many of you would support the idea of me being able to qualify for minority or women business, from the federal government business because I identify as a female? It's absurd.
You identify as a libertarian.
I identify
That's
as a
minority status.
That doesn't get me any money. But the point is, we don't know what identify means. And so if John and I can come and go from a women's bathroom in an elementary school and nobody can tell us we don't belong there, that is absurd. So come up with a standard for what identify means. But the idea that I simply get to say, this is how I feel, this is how I identify, get out of my way is absurd.
Teresa, has it ever happened to you that you've had someone who you thought was inappropriate walk into a restroom while you were there and make you feel uncomfortable?
No.
I have never had that happen in my entire life.
Given the loosening of social mores, is it not possible that adults are more concerned about this than children, than teens are? I mean, apparently a lot of teenagers are out protesting, saying this is stupid. But we don't want to just talk about Kansas. Let's go to Missouri. There is the Religious Freedom Amendment that may get on the ballot depending on what the Missouri House does. What would it do?
So it's an amendment to the Missouri Constitution that basically protects certain individuals and businesses who cite religious beliefs as a way of not providing services or goods to other individuals.
Like a florist.
A florist,
or
a baker,
baker.
Right, etc. And so that is a concern, but there are some that argue that it's very narrow defined, or the supporters say it's narrow defined and only, carving out those certain things, and then there's the opposition that's saying it's not narrow, it actually is broad, and like with any law, it's always, up to interpretation.
And John, critics say it's nothing less than discrimination.
No, you're creating a separate class of citizens in a state that already where LGBT is not a protected class. So what you are doing is this legislation, and in fact, I think it's important to note that this is a constitutional amendment. This is not something that is just simply a law or simply a directive. This could deeply impact the state. And I think what you're going to hear, you've already heard from hundreds of business leaders saying, we absolutely do not want this.
Right.
I'm going to have to stop you there because we're out of time, but an amendment can't be changed by the legislature. It has to be changed by a vote of the people. So if it's approved, you have to go through quite a hassle to get it changed in case it
costs. And it's difficult to appeal.
And now it is time for Roast and Toast, where the Rockettes give a pat on the back or a kick in the pants to people and events of the news. We begin with Patrick.
Well, thank you very much. A toast this week to Padraig Pearse and the men and women of the Easter Uprising in Dublin 100 years ago next week. These patriots put aside their political differences and stood up for liberty, self-determinism, and a better future for their children against a government that was unresponsive, uncaring, and elitist, which sounds very familiar.
Marianne.
I wanted to give a toast to the Kansas City Star for a recent editorial dealing with the issue of the Trump effect that was studied by the Southern Poverty Law Center. This article talked about the impact on children in schools, particularly minority children, of the really hateful rhetoric that's happened during the presidential campaign, and the fact that these kids are really nervous about their futures and their families being deported from the United States. I hope that the evolving campaign that is supposed to be kinder and gentler may in fact have some impact on how children feel in schools about their future in the United States.
Teresa.
Yes, I would like to give a toast to a group of my friends, Matt Dameron, Jason Grill, Mary Jane Judy, John Heil, Leo Prieto, and Rachel Hack Merlo, who all made this year's 40 under 40 class for Ingrams.
All right, John.
I'd like to give a toast to Governor Sam Brownback because barely into his second term, he's created a tax and spend system in Kansas that's driven them to the brink of insolvency, and it's finally brought them to the table to look at the benefits of a border war truce for the benefit of the Kansas side of the Kansas City Metro.
You did mean toast.
It is a toast, yes, a toast.
And finally, here is a toast to the Truman Good Neighbor Award Foundation presenting its annual luncheon event on May the 9th at the Downtown Marriott. The foundation awards scholarships, honors international students in Kansas City, and presents its major award to an honoree who represents the values associated with the Truman tradition. This year's recipient is U.S. Senator John McCain, who, despite what Donald Trump says, is a bona fide war hero. Information at the foundation's website. And so that is Ruckus for this time. We're back next Thursday at 7. Now, on behalf of the Ruckettes and the crew, I'm Mike Shannon saying thanks very much for watching and good night.
Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by Fred and Lou Hartwig and viewers like you. Thank you.